Trump gets bad news as new Epstein files are uncovered, and the revelations are already creating shock waves across the political landscape in Washington and beyond. The resurfacing of documents tied to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal has reintroduced questions about the late financier's powerful network and the individuals who were allegedly linked to him through travel records, meetings, or associations at his private properties. For former President Donald Trump, this development comes at a particularly sensitive time as he faces multiple legal battles on different fronts and tries to maintain momentum for his political future. The timing of these files emerging could not be worse, because they revive long-standing debates about Epstein's influence and the extent of his reach into the highest levels of government, business, and entertainment. The newly uncovered files reportedly include locked schedules, correspondence, and testimonies from individuals who interacted with Epstein during the height of his operations. While many names appear in the material, the inclusion of Trump has drawn intense scrutiny from both the media and political opponents. Trump has long maintained that he severed ties with Epstein many years before the scandal became public, and that his interactions were minimal and purely social in nature. However, the discovery of more detailed records has raised questions about the accuracy of that narrative. Observers note that the resurfacing of flight manifests and guest lists puts Trump's name alongside others who attended Epstein's notorious gatherings, fueling speculation about what exactly those encounters involved. Critics of Trump are seizing on the development to argue that the former president's history of association shows a troubling pattern that voters and investigators should take seriously. Already, television networks and online platforms are devoting hours of coverage to dissecting the meaning of the documents and drawing connections between Trump and Epstein's world of wealth, influence, and secrecy. The bad news for Trump is that even if no direct wrongdoing is established, the mere presence of his name in these files is enough to reignite a controversy that had been simmering quietly for years. Opponents know that public perception matters as much as legal evidence, especially during an election cycle where every revelation can alter the trajectory of the race. For Trump's loyal base, however, the new Epstein files are being framed as yet another coordinated attempt by political enemies and media outlets to tarnish his reputation. Supporters argue that many figures in politics and business had some contact with Epstein at one point or another, and that Trump is being unfairly singled out because of his high profile. They point to Trump's own statements in past interviews where he claimed to have distanced himself from Epstein after finding his behavior objectionable. Yet even these defenses face difficulty in neutralizing the impact of concrete documents showing overlaps in social circles. Political strategists observing the fallout note that the problem for Trump lies less in the hard evidence of misconduct and more in the cumulative effect of constant scandals. Every new headline about Trump's ties to controversial figures reinforces a narrative of chaos and impropriety. As one analyst put it, these stories add weight to an already heavy load of controversy surrounding the former president, and they provide ammunition for his rivals who are eager to paint him as unfit for office. The Epstein revelations may not on their own derail his political ambitions, but they compound the perception of endless baggage. Meanwhile, legal experts are assessing whether the files could become relevant in ongoing investigations. Several state and federal authorities continue to examine Epstein's network and its possible criminal implications beyond the crimes for which he was convicted. If Trump's name surfaces in contexts that suggest deeper involvement than previously known, it could trigger subpoenas or further inquiries. Even without formal charges, the process of scrutiny could consume time, energy, and resources that Trump would prefer to dedicate to his campaign. His legal team is already stretched across multiple courtrooms defending him against cases involving business fraud, election interference, and handling of classified documents. The Epstein files add yet another unpredictable dimension to this storm. Media outlets across the spectrum are amplifying the story, with some emphasizing the sensational aspects of Trump's connections while others urge caution and context. Tabloid-style coverage highlights party photos and guest lists that place Trump and Epstein in proximity, while more traditional reporting focuses on the substance of their files themselves. Regardless of the approach, the end result is the same: Trump once again finds himself at the center of controversy. Each time his name trends alongside Epstein, it undermines efforts by his team to steer the narrative back to economic issues, foreign policy, or criticisms of the current administration. Democrats have wasted no time in exploiting the moment by raising the Epstein revelations in campaign speeches and fundraising appeals. They argue that the new documents demonstrate the dangerous circles in which Trump moved and the type of company he kept. Republican rivals too see an opportunity to weaken Trump by subtly referencing the controversy in their own pitches to voters. While few within the party are willing to directly confront Trump, given his enduring influence, there are whispers behind the scenes that the Epstein files could be a vulnerability worth exploiting later. For the broader public, the story reopens old wounds about how Epstein operated for so long without facing meaningful consequences and how so many powerful individuals seemed entangled in his orbit. The bad news for Trump is that his brand has always been tied to wealth, celebrity and influence, the very domains where Epstein thrived. Any suggestion that he was more than a casual acquaintance can resonate deeply because it aligns with a perception of elitist connections and questionable alliances. In an era where trust in institutions is already fragile, these revelations further erode confidence in leaders who appear compromised. The unfolding drama also raises questions about how Trump will respond strategically. Historically, he has relied on aggressive counterattacks to shift the conversation. Already, allies are framing the Epstein files as a distraction manufactured by establishment forces terrified of Trump's political comeback. The question is whether such rhetoric will suffice in an environment where documents and testimonies provide tangible material for critics to analyze. Unlike vague accusations or anonymous leaks, these are official records tied to legal proceedings, making them harder to dismiss outright. Internationally, the story has sparked renewed interest as well because Epstein's connections extended across borders. Governments and media outlets in Europe and the Middle East are revisiting their own coverage of Epstein's network and its links to global elites. Trump's name being highlighted again in this context creates complications for his foreign policy positioning should he seek to return to the White House. Allies and adversaries alike monitor these developments and adjust their strategies based on perceptions of Trump's vulnerabilities. Financial markets too have reacted subtly, with analysts noting that controversies surrounding Trump tend to generate short-term volatility. Investors worry about the impact of political instability on policy continuity, especially in areas like trade regulation and defensive spending. While the Epstein revelations are not directly tied to economic policy, they feed into the broader uncertainty about Trump's political future and therefore about the direction of U.S. governance. Inside Trump's inner circle, advisors are reportedly divided on how aggressively to confront the issue. Some believe the best approach is to acknowledge past social connections while firmly denying any improper involvement. Others argue that ignoring the story and focusing on campaign themes is the wiser route. The challenge is that ignoring Epstein is almost impossible once new files keep surfacing and once media outlets demand responses. Every refusal to address the issue risks being portrayed as evasive. As the days progress, more details from the Epstein files are expected to emerge. Journalists are combing through thousands of pages of documents in search of names, dates and connections. Each new revelation carries the potential to generate headlines that extend the life of the controversy. For Trump, the danger lies not in one explosive disclosure, but in the steady drip of coverage that ensures voters never forget the association. Opponents understand this dynamic well and are prepared to amplify every mention across social media platforms where narratives take root quickly and are difficult to reverse. The controversy also intersects with cultural debates about accountability for powerful men accused of abusing their positions. Epstein's crimes highlighted systemic failures in law enforcement and justice, and any suggestion that figures like Trump were close to him reignites anger over double standards. Activists see the new files as a chance to demand greater transparency and to hold elites accountable regardless of political affiliation. This atmosphere makes it harder for Trump to dismiss the matter as trivial because it taps into broader societal frustrations. Ultimately, the bad news for Trump is not limited to the potential legal implications of the Epstein files, but extends to the political and reputational consequences. Every scandal that resurfaces becomes part of a mosaic that shapes how undecided voters view him. While his core base remains loyal, the battle for swing voters is influenced heavily by narratives of trust, character and judgment. Epstein's name carries such toxicity that any connection, no matter how tenuous, threatens to alienate crucial segments of the electorate. Trump has weathered storms before his resilience has often surprised critics. Yet the Epstein revelations strike at a particularly sensitive nerve because they involve themes of exploitation, secrecy and privilege that resonate widely. The fact that these files are newly uncovered gives them freshness in the news cycle, ensuring that they dominate coverage for weeks. Trump's challenge will be to either neutralize the issue through convincing rebuttals or to overwhelm it by shifting the conversation to other pressing topics. Both tasks are easier said than done, especially with opponents eager to keep Epstein's shadow looming large. As the story continues to evolve, the full extent of the damage to Trump remains unclear. What is clear, however, is that the new Epstein files represent a serious setback at a time when he can least afford distractions. With legal trials looming and campaign deadlines approaching, every development matters. For Trump, this is another reminder that past associations, even those long disavowed, can resurface unexpectedly and reshape the political battlefield. Whether he can withstand this latest storm will depend on his ability to manage both the legal implications and the court of public opinion, which has